Jeremy Gawade, Lee and Thompson. We are an entertainment law practice based in the West End of London, and we work a lot in the music, film, TV, theatre, publishing worlds, and I specialise in film and television. The classic route of funding a TV drama, the budget would be probably somewhere between £1 to £1.5 million. You would get anywhere between £700,000 to £900,000 per hour out of your broadcaster, and then you raise the deficit by means of the distribution advance. So you go to a distributor to pick up the rest of world rights, because obviously in the UK it's the producers who own the rights rather than the broadcaster. And also, of course, in recent years we've had the tax credit, which is worth about 20%, just under, of the budget, if it's a UK qualifying show. So you could usually pretty much fund your shows those ways. If the budget was a bit high, you might have to get one or two pre-sales, sometimes co-production deals, particularly if there was foreign filming involved. But it was pretty straightforward getting the shows funded once you'd got the green light from the commissioning broadcaster.
Yeah, he's called Neil Ackroyd. He lives down Ebden Bridge. He's happy to come in and be interviewed or all.
What's happened now is, in the last 2 to 3 years, maybe 2 to 3 years, I guess, the projects have got bigger. So instead of doing 6-hour series, when everybody wants to do the 8 to 10-hour series, budgets have therefore gone up. The production values have gone up, the cast costs have gone up, the talent, attracting bigger talent to the shows, therefore increased fees. So the budget range is now anywhere between, for a domestic drama, well, in fact, I suppose a domestic and then a drama that crosses over into the international space, anywhere between 1.2 million to £3 million an hour. And at that level, if you're only getting between £750,000 to £1 million an hour from your UK commissioning broadcaster, you've got to be clever about the way you then raise the balance of your funding. And that's where I suppose it's become a bit more like the film world, where with a feature film producer, certainly in the UK and in Europe, you have to piece your funding together from all sorts of different sources. So I think that's what's happened in the TV space increasingly.
What about Monica Chatwin?
Don't pull me in on your turf war.
Except I think she's involved in yours.
I'm not in one.
I can link her to your brother.
The Amazons, the Netflix of this world, there's kind of two types of deal, really. They're either fully commissioning and owning, as in the case of The Crown, which was a massive project, the biggest ever production in the UK, I think. Or they will come on board for a window to take a license. It could be an exclusive license for a territory. So, for example, in Happy Valley, the show that Red Production Company produced in the UK, it was very successful in the UK, as you know, and there was a lot of interest in North America to take the exhibition rights. Various broadcasters were competing. In the end, they went with Netflix, and they just took an exclusive deal for North America for a license period for those rights. So that's one type of deal. The other type of deal, as I've said, is where the Netflix or Amazon will fully fund and take all rights. And that's where it gets complicated, because, of course, they haven't been set up in a number of territories. They've only been set up in limited territories, but yet they want to control rights globally. So there's a whole issue there about what happens to the exploitation in the territories where they don't have outlets, and that gets quite complicated. And then what is also happening now is, as you said, there are windows. So you might do a deal whereby Netflix is taking global rights, but subject to the commissioning broadcaster's first window, and then you have to marry in the requirements of the commissioning broadcaster with Netflix's rights, etc. So there's a whole raft of complicated deals that are currently being negotiated across a wider range of projects.
War is spectator sport. We are emperors of Rome, Andrew. Blood and steel, the only elements that ever meant anything.
I think the issue is that in order for the level of license fees to continue to be paid that they're being paid at the moment, particularly out of North America, the people who are buying those shows in North America have to get value. So that's either audience and or critical appraisal and awards, Emmys and the like. I think when the audiences start to fall off for some of these British shows in North America and or they aren't getting awards, then perhaps there'll be a reappraisal as to the prices being paid, and that will obviously have knock-on effects on the budgets. There's a show I'm working on at the moment, which is 8 1 hours, budget of £20 million. So probably of that, about a quarter of the budget is coming, maybe a bit more, a third of the budget out of the UK. So they have to raise the rest from the rest of the world. And there's a big American deal in there. Now, if you'd wound back 3 years ago, there was no way you'd have got that level of licence fee for this particular type of show.
My name?
Yes, ma'am. Your regnal name. That is the name you will take as queen.
Let's not overcomplicate matters unnecessarily. My name is Elizabeth.
And long live Queen Elizabeth.
We helped Peter Morgan do his deal on The Crown, and when we first did the deal, it wasn't then known that Netflix was going to come on board as the commissioning broadcaster. So we knew it was going to be a big show because it was based on a successful stage play, the audience, and also an existing film, The Queen, which Helen Mirren had been in. And we knew the ambitions for it were going to be large in terms of production values, because you've got Peter, who writes great material. Stephen Daldry was going to get attached. He was the guy who did the stage play. And they were bringing on board a pretty hefty production team with big experience. And I think they could have got a commission probably out of both the BBC and ITV for substantial licence fees. But I think Netflix, in effect, made a preemptive bid to come on board and to fund it. And Sony, who were then Sony owned Left Bank Pictures. And I guess there must have been a discussion between Left Bank Pictures, the production company, and Sony, because Sony would like to have sold it around the world. But I guess if Netflix are coming on board and taking all rights, then I'm not quite sure what deal they ended up doing between them. But obviously that would diminish the international sales potential. But I think Netflix paid a premium price for it.
I'm in a dream.
You're in my dream. I designed every part of this place. It's not a theme park, but an entire world.
In America for a while now, talent, high-end talent, I suppose primarily acting, and I guess directors and sometimes actors have had their own production companies, particularly on the film side. But obviously now a lot of major talent is moving into television, getting involved in TV, and on the back of that, they're setting up their own production companies to develop and produce TV shows. And in America, I know that's for a fact. So what's happening is in the UK now, some of the major acting talent, writing talent, directing talent, less directing actually, more writing and acting talent are setting up their own production companies or having joint ventures with existing production companies, whereby I suppose they do it for various reasons. One is to have greater control over how the project unfolds in terms of development and production, because if you own the production company or co-own the production company that's going to be developing and producing, gives you more control. Secondly, I guess in terms of enhancement of fees and revenues, because in addition to your acting and writing fees, if you own the production company, you're going to get a chunk of the production company fee and also ownership in terms of the IP, because obviously in the UK in particular, production companies own IP usually rather than the broadcasters. So if you're the talent, you've got a production company, you're going to co-own or own the IP as well. So that, yeah, that's increasingly starting to happen, I think. We worked on a big show called Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which was a big show for BBC. Substantial budget. Again, their license fee was only a percentage of the overall budget. So the producers, Cuba Pictures, had to put together a financing package, and they worked with a packager to do that, interestingly, called Artist Studios, run by Justin Thompson Glover and Patrick Irwin, who specialise in working with producers to help funding for larger scale projects. So Artist Studios worked with Cuba to put the budget together, and that involved a Canadian co-production, as I recall it, US pre-sale, UK tax credits, distribution advance, and I think one other pre-sale. So again, quite a complex financing structure. So that was put together over a 3 to 6 month period once the project had been greenlit. there's this whole issue about the tax credit, because if you're producing drama in the UK and you've got a budget at a lower level, so maybe about $1 million-ish, just over, I think the broadcasters are wary of the producers making any profit on the tax credit, because the whole point they feel of the tax credit is to actually go into production rather than into the revenue pots of the producers. So I think they may be starting to look more closely at how those tax credits are going to be used, are being used, and actually getting a piece of them themselves going forward if they're not being used for the budget. So there's a sort of debate going on at the moment about that aspect, I think, of funding. License fees, I think, on the whole, are staying pretty much the same. Sometimes they'll try and reduce them a bit, depending on the scale of the project and the nature of the production. But obviously for the higher level productions, then high level budget productions, you need the broadcaster to maintain the level of license fee. In fact, sometimes you need them to pay higher license fees.
I suggest a toast to Trade Pass and all those who sail in her. I think that's something we can all drink to. Wait! Good Christ, what a miserable bunch. We just had a triumphant opening night.
There's an interesting model that WME have introduced. So they bought IMG and they have now set up a TV distribution company, and this Chris Rice is quite involved in all that, and he did a very interesting deal on The Night Manager where he actually acted as an international packager as well as a domestic packager on that, and then took the distribution rights into IMG through his packaging role rather than using a traditional distributor. So I think there's going to be, watch this space, because the commissions being charged, I believe, under that deal were less than the distribution commissions that regular distributors charge. So from the producer's point of view, I suppose you need to analyse, if I'm being charged less commission going that route, is that more attractive to me than going the route using an established distributor that has all those great international contacts for distribution, and is going to charge me a higher commission rate. So I think that's going to be interesting to see how that whole packaging business works, particularly the American agents coming out of the US and trying to get more involved in the UK and European space and internationally, about how they get involved in that. That'll be interesting to see. And I think the other interesting thing is these so-called co-productions, whether it's going to diminish the creative value of these shows, because if you wind back 15, 20 years, there were quite a lot of European TV drama co-productions being made, and they ended up being what are called Euro puddings, where the script content and the actual end product was not that good, because you had all these different inputs from different broadcasters wanting different things. So that'll be interesting to see how that creative process unfolds under the pressure of the money coming from all these different sources, and whether the producers and the writers can retain creative control in the face of the requirements of the financiers coming into these bigger scale projects. So I suppose those would be a few things to watch out for, I think.